Okay, welcome to today's Jono Talks F1 podcast. It's a little bit later than usual on the Wednesday because it's been quite busy this week, but on the plus side, what a race it was. Obviously, it's the Baku Grand Prix. Not as many safety cars as I was thinking there would be, but yeah, for the first time in a little bit, it feels like we had a genuine race on our hands. We didn't know. To be fair, we had no idea who was actually going to finish first. The Ferrari was looking quite strong, but there was some really good, genuine racing and some good overtaking. A proper fight for the lead, which we'd not had for a while. It could have been anyone's. It was quite refreshing to sit back and enjoy some great racing, even with a bit of drama at the end, which we'll get into a little bit later. So Oscar took the win of the race. Lando got off to a really good start, making some key places at the beginning of the race. You have to argue he should have been further up the field after that silly little qualifying incident, though. The team apologising to him as they failed to get him into the Q3 session. Some people are confused as to why they're apologising, but I think it was basically because they left it too late to be able to get out and put a decent run in, get him into Q3 session. It was sort of, they were caught out and the driver paid the price. Obviously, the yellow flags are always a bit of an incident, and obviously you got to let off if you get a yellow flag on your fast lap to avoid being penalised, but they left it too late and they got caught out by yellow flags basically, and that's why they were apologising to him, because they then realised that they'd screwed up the chances of getting into qualifying 3. I think he could have got pole position, having made it to Q3, which would have possibly changed the outcome of the race entirely. We don't know. I mean, maybe would have forced Oscar into another audacious overtake, but again, that's if and buts. Lando making those positions at the start was key. It meant that he could chase down Max. Max was able to overtake George at the beginning too, which it was neither here or there. George should be doing better in my eyes. His counterpart Lewis started from the pit lane due to the engine swap, which it's now come out in some sources, not all of them, so I don't know how true it is, but apparently Lewis's side of the garage didn't want to swap the engine, but Mercedes overruled them and swapped it anyway, apparently. So it's a bit of fuel to the fire for those conspiracies out there. I mean, it's neither here or there. You may as well change it at a race where you can make places up. He didn't have a fantastic race, but there's a whole different argue for Lewis there, which we may dip into a bit later. Sergio was a much better weekend for him, sort of. It was a much more consistent qualifying and a better race for him, apart from the obvious coming together towards the end. Which, in my eyes, looks like the mistake of someone who is under giant amounts of pressure. And while we're on the subject of it, let's get into it. There's a lot of eyes on the incident and people are blaming Carlos Sainz for it. And personally, I don't agree. Now, I'm not any sort of master racer. I don't have much skill when it comes to racing, and the most amount of racing experience I have is go-karting, but Perez is behind. He has more of the track available and no wall immediately next to him. And furthermore, he can actually see Carlos Sainz. Sainz might not even be able to see him next to him. We all know them mirrors are tiny on those F1 cars. And even though they've made them bigger this year, that doesn't mean that you can see all of a sudden. It might have been one of them awkward angles. It might not have, but for me, Perez had everything on his side. He could have just eased left a little bit, but yeah. One thing for sure is Sergio can see him, and the ball was in his court. He gives no room, even though he's got the entire track there. So they both crashed, and Checo could have backed out of that and lived to fight at the next corner. I don't understand why. It looked like desperation. It looked like he was forcing it, trying to force the overtaking. You can't really do that in F1 because that happens. So it seems like he's racing for a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders right now. I don't know if Red Bull are giving him an ultimatum at the moment or something, but we're seeing brash and desperate driving from him. The the way he was instantly shouting down the team radio and swearing, and then gets out and shoves Sainz's head after a fit of rage. It's all the telltale signs of a man whose seat could be under threat in my eyes. How Sainz was unexpected of it and a little bit baffled by what had happened, and for good cause as well, because there's nowhere he could have gone. He had the wall next to him, and yeah, people will say, well, you could have just backed out or something like that, but you don't back out of racing. If you're there, you stick in it because the other person might break early, and if you back out of it, you're just giving them a place. So he didn't do anything wrong in my eyes. And Christian Horner, after the race, said that they're looking to try and how did he word it? It was something along the lines of he's looking to hoping that Ferrari get a grid penalty drop or whatever, however you say it. But basically, he was bringing the investigation to the FIA to try and get Ferrari a grid drop for the next race, as he feels that Ferrari should be punished for that, which is Red Bull all over. It's now come out that there's no further action to it, from what I've seen. That was checking today, and from what I've seen, there's no further action, so there's going to be no penalties for Ferrari on that one. Like I say, I think, to be honest, at most I'd say it was racing incident, but if you had to pin blame, I would say it's Sergio Perez's fault. I don't think you can say much more than that on that. Lando unexpectedly playing the team game as well, which was very unexpected and weird after McLaren confirmed that Oscar was now to play second fiddle to Lando and help Lando out as much as possible. And obviously he's the main person fighting Max for the championship. And he was the one that was holding the Red Bull back to ensure that Oscar could win the race. So he was a bit of an unsung hero in that race in the weekend. It's always a bitter pill to swallow when you're asked to deliberately hold someone back so your teammate can have an advantage over them and you, because you're trying to win the race as well, remember. But he did it without even hesitating as well. Right from the get-go, his words were, how long for? There was no hesitation in it or anything, and that's tremendous for the team and tremendous for someone who's a second driver. That's not what a first driver does who's chasing the World Championship down. Don't get me wrong, the McLaren's mistake in qualifying cost Lando a lot this weekend. But he only put a dent into Max's lead by 3 points. And he played second fiddle to Oscar. Literally days after McLaren announced that it'll be the other way around. A huge chunk of this is because McLaren messed up in that qualifying, and it is what it is. It's not like they did it on purpose or anything. They just got caught out by yellow flags and left it too late in the day to send him out for his fast lap. But it was always coming. McLaren keep doing this. I always say you make your own luck in this sport, and they're making the mistakes of people, for me, that aren't that experienced being up at the top. And maybe it's because they're not experienced. It's been a while now since they've been at the top, so they're making mistakes that are costing them hugely. And it can have big implications going forward, especially after he's helped Oscar win the race this weekend. I know if I was Oscar going into the race to come in the weekend, and I needed another favour, I'd be thinking it's fine. Lando's got my back. I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd be thinking, yeah, he'll hold back for me. And then looking even further ahead, if Max wins the title, it'll come back to this once again. I keep saying it, and I've been saying it for a few episodes now. McLaren are throwing away points. Putting a 3-point dent into Max's lead is going to do nothing. They didn't make a clear first driver decision early enough in the season to capitalise on the Red Bull and make the most of every opportunity. And I sort of, in a way, I don't blame them, because I don't think they were expecting to have to make that choice this year. I think with the Red Bull dominating early on in the season, they thought it would be another runaway victory for Red Bull, and they would be fighting it out the second best. So I feel like they've kind of been caught out by that and didn't expect to be in the position they're in. And they know they've got a tough fight on their hands if they're going to capitalise on it and get Lando closer to winning the World Drivers' Championship, but the sky is your limit. Maybe the recent rule regulations after the summer have also helped out, but that's another story. I think they started off this season thinking they're fighting for second best, which brings us to Red Bull. Maybe even fourth best or fifth best at the moment for Red Bull, actually. Max's brakes aren't working again. Or rather, a better way to explain that is Max has another issue with his brakes yet again after the summer break. We saw in the race just gone yet again after obviously the summer, Max having more issues. There's also a video that went over social media this week that the video goes into details and actually breaks down in sort of a demonstration possible system that Red Bull were using. It's all speculation though, of course, because we have no idea which team apparently was using it, but yeah, this video goes into the Australia incident where Max's brakes caught on fire and how since the Red Bull has lost a significant amount of pace from the summer break, since the FIA had banned asymmetric brake systems. It details an example of how such a system would work and also how it could have set fire to the brakes. But once again, whether Red Bull are using it or not, we probably will never know. But one thing is for sure, they've lost a tremendous amount of pace since the summer break and since asymmetric braking has been banned. That's the facts of that. To narrow it down even more though, it's not they, it's Max. So Max has lost a lot of pace in his car since the summer. Sergio's car is about right. It's about where it was. And if they were using it, they'd have to look out into how long Red Bull have been using it for and look to hand a sizable punishment to them, because it is cheating if they have been using it. It's clearly in the rules it's not allowed, and it's not some sort of soft innovation, if you like. It's a clear breach of the rules. They were set out to stop such a thing existing, so they would need to be punished accordingly. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, what about the Mercedes DAS system? See, it's not the same situation, because the Mercedes system, what a lot of people don't know, is all the way through the season, Mercedes were actually given the blueprints of their system to the FIA. So they didn't keep it a secret. Yeah, they didn't tell the other teams, but they handed all the blueprints over to the FIA all along and said, this is what we have on our car. And the FIA never once said, that's illegal, take it off, until other teams like Red Bull then began asking for investigations from Red Bull. And even then, it was only banned. Can't remember the exact reason it was banned, but they made it clear that it gave them no advance or advantage in time. So it's not the same, the DAS system versus asymmetric braking, before anyone says anything. It was a few years ago, so I can't remember everything, so apologies for all the ums and the ers. But I don't think we'll see a day where we will know what team has been using asymmetric braking. Like I say though, it is strange how it's only Max's car that's lost so much pace and has so many brake issues. Perez has been down pace all year compared to Max, and until the summer break, they're now equal, and Perez is actually outracing Max. He's qualifying better, and he's arguably racing better until his little coming together with the Ferrari. So yeah, it kind of adds fuel to the fire that they were up to no good. And even this weekend, Max having more brake issues, but yet Perez was up there fighting for the podium with no issues. So, I mean, yeah, it didn't quite go his way from a crash, but that crash was undeniably avoidable in my eyes, so he should have backed out, lost the fight, but live again to win the war. Which brings us to Russell, who seems to look out on the podium again and again and again. And like I say, I'm a firm believer in you make your own luck. So the key overtake that he got on Max early in the early stages of the race had a pretty significant factor in it. But apart from that, it was a mediocre race for him. He looked outstanding on the podium, but there wasn't really much that he did. Take it with a pinch of salt, but he didn't necessarily deserve that podium. He was just more of a bystander and took the win as it came. The win being third place, but yeah. One of the best parts of the race to watch, though, was the fact that Oscar and Leclerc were drifting together through the corners from pushing so hard. It feels like it's so long since we've been seeing a few cars from different teams almost on equal playing fields and drivers probably driving to stay ahead or to try and overtake. And it was bloody good to see. The cameraman that caught them coming through the exit of that corner sideways did a superb job as well, by the way. But these days, tactics and tyres and how fast the tyres wear out or how unpredictable the tyres are and trying to save fuel here and there, the dirty air that people get into. It kind of ruins racing these days, especially when they get to a track and they say, oh, the medium tyre's not going to last 2 laps, and it lasts 48 laps and nobody makes an overtake. So it was a proper joy to see some actual good racing for once, and knowing that if Oscar locked up once, Charles Leclerc was going to be on his back. And yeah, it was great. It made a real change, and I'm hoping we get to see the same this weekend. So it was good. But I am a bit worried that Max is going to win this year. Let's take a little drink. Purely because Lando's getting 2 little points with the races dwindling away. He needs to be finishing on the podium every chance he gets and crunching Max's lead. 3 points taken off his lead is nothing. Even if Max DNFs this weekend, it's a huge chunk of points he's still missed out on. Say if Lando won the last race, that's 25 points. And if Max still finished 4th or whatever, it's these kind of moments that will win or lose a championship. So, yeah. And don't get me wrong, there is a chance this weekend anything could happen. But if Lando doesn't finish on the podium this weekend, I think that'll be it for his championship hopes, I think. He needs to close the gap as soon as he possibly can. The struggle in Red Bull, finding it hard to even get into the top 5 is the time that you need to be capitalising on it, you know. The crash was arguably, if you don't really know much about F1, it was arguably one of the most interesting points of the race, but it was easily avoidable. That it was kind of the icing on top of the cake for a proper race, though, wasn't it? We got some good hard racing. For once, it didn't matter about the tyres. People were pushing and actually racing. You had Charles Leclerc staying on the back of Piastri lap after lap and pushing each other and going quicker and quicker. And then I know in my eyes, when you've had a good karting race, there's usually a bit of action or a bit of a crash. So yeah, it was kind of the icing on top of the cake. They had so much going on. If the rest of the races this season are just like that, it could be a great finish to the season. Maybe not the most exciting in terms of championship, because like I say, this weekend, if Max finishes above Lando, then I think Max could win this year. But this is the nitty gritty now too. Don't forget, this is where the lower teams really fight for those last championship point scoring positions to try and seal as much reward money as they can for the winter break. Because the more championship constructors points they get, the more money they have to build a better car for next year. So I think there's plenty more drama to come yet. It's my favourite part of the season, really. The McLaren, I think, probably have the constructors sealed by now. I don't really see much competition from Ferrari being able to catch them. If Ferrari catch McLaren for the constructors, they've done something wrong. McLaren should seal the constructors with no issue. But Red Bull will try everything they can to try and seal that constructors as well. Don't forget, if you finish where you finish in the constructors determines where you line up in the pit lane as well. And you want to be the first garage when you're in a race. Get your pit stop done first. It can be so advantageous, especially if it's a safety car. So I think Red Bull will try everything they can to try and finish as far up the field as they can, but unless Perez stops crashing and Max actually starts finishing on the podium, they're not going to win the constructors this year. This weekend, Caesar returns to the Singapore night race. This isn't the one where the track limits are very unforgiving, though, and the drivers need to have their wits about them. Speaking of which, Oliver Behrman and Franco Colapinto did a solid job this weekend just gone. I know K-Mag is back for Singapore, but they did a solid job. It's not an easy track. It's physically demanding, and they arguably did better than their predecessors by quite a margin. Maybe unfair to say about Oliver Behrman, because I think K-Mag wouldn't have had an issue on that track. And it does suit the Haas and the Williams cars, because they have a good straight line speed anyway, but they did a solid job this weekend, so I think they definitely have a bright future ahead of them. I'm excited for this weekend's race, though. I think interesting revelations will be if McLaren can sort their mix-up out. Reinforce what they said that Oscar will be playing. I mean, it's a bit unfair to say playing second fiddle, but will be helping Lando going forward. The last weekend was not very good for that, because it might put a mindset into Oscar that Lando's now there to help him, but let's see if McLaren stay true to their word and actually prioritise Lando. It's a very important weekend for them. They need to get Lando on the podium minimum. They need a race win to capitalise as much as possible, and they need Max to finish out the points to really make a dent in it. But unless something happens, I don't see Max finishing out the points. I think he's going to struggle to finish on the podium. It's going to be between Ferrari and Mercedes, but they really need to make this weekend count. Mercedes-wise, I'm not really sure what's happening with these. This year, the car is on a real knife edge, and in terms of whether it will perform or not, especially in Lewis's case, which I touched on this a little before. So in the practice sessions, he seems to be the fastest out of the two between Russell and Lewis by a decent margin. But then when it comes to qualifying, his issues just ramp up. Some with the team, it's come out recently that for some reason they're giving him cold tyres out the blankets for qualifying, which perplexes me. I don't understand why as a team you would do this. You would want both your drivers to be doing well. The more points you get for the team, the more reward money you receive. So, especially with Lewis leaving, I know I'd want my drivers to be finishing up there so we can get as much of a backing behind us for next year. So, I don't think going forward we'll see much of Lewis on the podium, but it seems very strange to me that Mercedes would be giving him cold tyres out the blankets for qualifying. We even heard it on his team radio. He was saying, let's get those tyres warmed up. It makes a huge difference, especially if he's leaving late towards the end of Q3 to do a fast lap and they give him cold tyres. It means he's got to do a really good out lap to get his tyres ready for the hot lap, but sometimes might even need 2 laps to warm them up. So, yeah, I may have to keep an eye on that, but I feel dwindling out towards the end of the season, Mercedes and maybe just sit pretty in fourth in the constructors and they'll just try and finish wherever they can. I feel they're still trying to learn the car. They might have a strong 2025, but obviously Lewis is going to be looking towards Ferrari. And speaking of which, they're finishing on a strong note this year, which is a positive for Lewis moving over, but I won't expect anything much from Lewis next year. He's got a lot of changes to I'll be impressed if he finishes on the podium more than 10 races next year, because there's a lot of changes going through, especially culture changes. So that's going to mentally be hard on someone. But if they can keep up their performance that they took to Baku, they could be the deciding factor in Lando finishing second place to Max this year as well in the driver's standings. Because at the moment, it's very close between Ferrari and McLaren. I don't actually know who is the quicker out of the two of them. I reckon McLaren just have the fastest car on the grid, but it's definitely between Ferrari and McLaren. If they keep it up, they can put a real spanner in the works for Lando. Which, to be fair, I never thought I'd be saying Lando's in with a shot of winning the championship, but if Ferrari have anything to say about it, he doesn't. Anything could happen this weekend, though. I think we're in a strong chance of seeing a safety car, especially if Perez had anything to say about it. I feel like we might see some unexpected people into Q3 as well. I feel like K-Mag might be there, and we'll see Alex Albon in Q3. But if we have another great race of 4 or 5 Allen at the front for first place in the race again, that would be a dream, because it was such fun to watch, and just to watch 4 or 5 cars fighting it out for a change. And the little drama at the end was a nice little touch to it. But yeah, if we have a repeat of that this weekend, it'll be an awesome race. Yeah, qualifying wise though, unless there's yellow flags that really mix it up, it could be a straightforward qualifying. But you will see. And that pretty much wraps it up for about this episode. Like I say, apologies it's a bit late, because I usually release these at like 10 a.m. But with how busy it's been this week, I've not been able to. We'll soon see if this weekend is a great race, and until then, take care of yourselves.